Zero perspective. Yeah, I did some book signings at local libraries, and I got my book into a couple of local stores, a comic shop, things like that. So that's off to a
Ew.
good start.
It sounds like such a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. Driving around, like you just show up at stores and talk to the owner and hope they'll sell the book. You have to try to get them to buy it, and it's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
How close are you to New York City?
About an hour away,
About an hour away.
maybe.
Do you come down here to do
Yeah.
any marketing?
I haven't yet. I'm probably gonna hopefully start getting around to that because that's definitely the place to go.
Yeah, it's so close too. I'm just
Yeah,
looking at
yeah,
your. I mean, did not do any research before starting this. I got a hold of you to do to have a conversation about Colts.
yeah. Colts.
Yeah, and I especially wanted to talk about Lovecraftian cults, but you don't know much about Lovecraft, but know a lot about
No,
cults.
unfortunately not. I haven't read a lot of Lovecraft. But I do know quite a bit of real cults. I wrote an article about Jonestown for a
Jonestown,
magazine, and
that's the big
um,
one, right? That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, that's one of the most shocking ones
I mean,
there is. I
tell
mean,
me how did that work out? He threatened to kill the children if they didn't drink the Kool-Aid, or did
The
they go
the
into it
funny
blindly?
thing is nobody really knows exactly for sure what happened because like almost no one survived, and the only people who did survive were like hiding, so they didn't see everything.
Yeah,
So nobody really knows like exactly what went down with the poisoning. The only things that they really see is that no guns were fired. So all the armed guards, like nobody got shot. So they're not sure how many people were really forced to do it or, just went along with it willingly. The other interesting thing is a lot of people were injected with the poison rather than drank it. So they're not sure if that was also like, if they were forcibly injected or if that was just a way to get it done faster.
interesting.
The whole thing's kind of a mystery.
Well, he killed a congressman. I think there was gunfire
Um,
at the airport.
yeah,
Like they were
at
on
the
their
airport.
way.
Yeah,
They were
yeah,
escaping. They were just about done. They grabbed some witnesses and they were about to leave the country. I think, if I remember correctly.
yeah. The congressman went down there to see what was going on, and one of the cult members grabbed the congressman and put a knife to his throat and threatened to kill him. And some of the other members, got the other guy off the congressman, and the congressman gathered up whoever he could, took off. They went to the plane, but by the time they got to the plane, Jim Jones had sent a bunch of armed guys with assault rifles there, and they just shot everyone down. And I think it was one of the cameramen that survived, and I think one other person
It's
survived the
crazy. This
shooting.
guy, Jim Jones, was only 47 years old. I say only because it's like 5 years older than I am. Um, I can't imagine talking. God, how many people did he kill? 200?
Over
100?
900 people.
918 people. Yeah.
Over
918
900.
people. How did he do it? I mean, that's the most crucial part to all cults, right? Is the cult leader, the guy who's able to talk people into doing these horrible things. I mean, it's Jim Jones, um, who just died, swastika on his forehead, famous guy from California.
Charles Manson.
There you go. It just died, just died. Cult leader, right? I mean, in a way, it's like, why do people follow these dudes? Or aren't really too many
That's
women cult leaders, are there?
There's a few. There's a few. Um, but that's the interesting thing. It's like what about a person gives the ability to like acquire that many followers and convince people of these things and get them to join. Like it's such a strange phenomenon. Like
Especially for people like us, right? Because we'd love to have 918 people like at our beck and call. Send them send them a Twitter message and say, "Hey, yo, like my thing, retweet, blah blah blah." You're doing really good there. I mean, this guy, without the internet, was able to capture the imaginations, hearts, and souls of 918 people. Get
yeah.
all their family, get
See,
all their money,
the
get them
thing
to leave
about
the
Jim
country.
Jones is the strange thing is he started out with almost good intentions. Before Jonestown and before all that happened, I mean, he was a preacher and he was a civil rights activist for and fought against racism, things like that. And he actually made a difference back then when he was doing those things. But then when he started building more and more followers, he just got weirder and weirder and weirder. And things just, got worse and worse and worse. And it's strange. Like, do these people plan these things? Do they have this idea in their head, or does it just become that? Like, did he have good intentions in the beginning and just like lose his mind? I mean, it's crazy.
He wasn't reading. I mean, he was reading interesting people too as a child. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page right now. Stalin. I mean, you're going to study Stalin, his philosophy. That's a pretty hardcore dude. Mao, hardcore dude. Hitler, right? I mean, these guys had really strong philosophies where violence is kind of front and center. But at the same time, he's studying Gandhi and Marx. Marx is not
Yeah.
violent, I
And
don't think. Marx is more what? Peaceful? Oh no.
yeah,
Which
the basic, I mean, the core, real idea of it never ends up that way in reality, of course, but
mhm. Father was an
uh
alcoholic associated with the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, these are not positive things. Grew up in Depression era Indiana. Um, I mean, very similar to Charlie Manson, right? I read a little bit of Helter Skelter. The guy had a horrible childhood and grew up in West Virginia, basically illiterate, spent his entire childhood in prisons, young adulthood in prisons. But like he can convince people things like that he was smart and special and you can get away with certain what I don't know. But I mean, they stand out as being special. They convince people they're
yeah,
special.
it's strange how they I don't know how people, I mean, I guess that's the mystery, is how do these people do that? I mean, Charles Manson had people convinced he was Jesus Christ. Like,
Yeah.
he considered himself, the second coming of Jesus, and the world was going to end. And uh I mean, it's crazy, and people believed him. I think there
And not
was
only
like
that, but
a
people were so afraid of him they'd kill themselves out of fear
yeah,
that he would kill them. I mean, how bizarre is that? Like you're willing to kill yourself out of fear that somebody else is going to kill you.
yeah,
It's kind of power in
it's
the guy.
bizarre. That's one of the things that happened at Jonestown. Outside of Jonestown, there was a house, and it was the only like outside communication within Jonestown. They had like a radio.
Yeah.
And when Jim Jones started poisoning everyone, he told the people in the house to kill themselves, and they did it. I mean, they could have just walked away with their lives and just left all of it, but they killed themselves. It's
So
just insane.
was he painting a picture of a doomsday? I mean, that's where it would be easier, right? If you know things are going to end anyway, the apocalypse is upon you, or you're going to be hurt even more if you don't do it.
Yeah, he hit Jim Jones ran these drills in the middle of the night, like every night, and he called them white nights, and he would sound alarms, and everyone would be woken up and called out to the like meeting area, and they would like rehearse end of the world scenarios almost on a nightly basis. So it was like brainwashing people and just wearing them down, I think, to the point where when he went to poison them, they were so mentally drained and worn down, they just went along with it. I mean, people poisoned their own children and everything there. It's just, I mean, it's bizarre and horrifying.
Was it all about nuclear annihilation? Was it about that? The
Partly,
incoming?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of it was nuclear annihilation. And another part of it was the outside world coming and destroying the peaceful community they had. And that's what the
Interesting
White Knights
dynamic,
were
right?
about. Yeah.
We're so peaceful, we commit mass suicide.
That's what it was about too. He said, we won't commit violence against anyone else. If they come here to destroy us, we'll destroy ourselves first.
What were they hoping to get out of their community? Utopia?
Yeah, I mean,
Communism?
that's pretty much the idea, just like a utopia.
Benevolent model of communist community.
Yeah.
The purest communists there are. What I'm not finding is a sex thing here. Normally there's a sex thing. Was he having sex with the
Yeah.
was he? Yeah,
Jim Jones wasn't,
he
I
was
don't
not.
think not as hard on the sex thing as some of the other cults.
I'm not seeing
Um,
it at all in here.
there probably was some stuff going on, I'm sure. Um, but witnesses, lack of witness testimonies after the event, of course. because I mean, pretty much everybody in that cult died. I mean, there were so few people who survived it. Oh,
Especially the thing itself. I mean, the ones that did survive were not there. They were,
yeah.
I think they were in the United States, or they were at the airport with the congressman and survived that shooting with bullet wounds and whatnot. But yeah, they barely survived. There's like, if they were on the compound, they probably would have done the same thing. Do you know another one that's really interesting like this is the Heaven's Gate, where the guys thought the Hales Bob comet was going to take them onto a spaceship or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's funny how many have to do with aliens. A lot of them have to do with aliens.
Like aliens have the better society or something.
Yeah, like aliens are going to come back and take those who are worthy or those who are pure and take them, elsewhere and start a new society or, whatever the case is. A lot of alien stuff.
Oh, this is fantastic. I don't want to go back necessarily to the to Jim Jones, but he claimed, this is so fascinating, that he was the only true heterosexual in the world, I guess, and then went on to um, sexually abuse a male member of his congregation in front of his followers. And I guess he had a lot of male lovers along in the congregation. He took female lovers too.
Oh,
So he's one of those very odd ducks that condemned homosexuality, but yet engaged in it quite often.
yeah. A lot of the groups, there's one it was called the Buddha Field. And this one didn't involve any murders or deaths like some of the others, but um, the members were not allowed to have like sex with each other, but he would have sex with all of them. So it's like it's so bizarre. He tells people you can't do this, it's bad, and then that's exactly what he does to them.
What's the promise, isn't it? It's a promise of something magnificent. With the Heaven's Gate guys, they were going someplace else, not the United States anymore. They're going to some utopia someplace else. And I guess Jim Jones was trying to create a utopia. Um, I mean, things are so bad that they're able to warp these people to think that they know more than society in general.
Yeah, and I know Jim Jones, a lot of the people that joined his cult, he like, fed on their weaknesses or fed on their vulnerabilities. Like a lot of like, poor people or, people in desperate situations, and he would just rope them in with his sermons and get them to join the cult. And I mean, it's amazing how these people are able to do that. It's just
I don't think they're looking though, right? I mean, the people that are in their congregation are coming to them. They're not on the street corner going, come join me and we're going to do something horrible to ourselves in about a month or so. I mean, they're getting people to recruit their families, right? And friends. I mean, how are they filling these ranks? Um, this guy's in Guyana, right? In South America. He's not pulling people from the streets of New York or Los Angeles or whatever, but he's still got 918 people down there. That's the thing
yeah,
that
well,
gets me.
yeah, he started out in America and he said he convinced everyone to actually move down there to South America and build that whole compound. And that was the other amazing thing is I mean, they literally built a whole little town in the middle of a jungle in South America, like hundreds of miles away from anything. I
I
mean,
wonder if anybody ever did a study on the town itself. Was it magnificent? I mean, there's houses. I'm looking at a 1979 photo. All these little tiny homes, black and white, obviously, because it's 1979. They didn't have color photographs then. Joking. I mean, it doesn't look like it's utopia. You know what I mean? It looks pretty horrible.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard from, from the few people that did survive is it was terrible there. There wasn't enough food to eat. No one got any sleep because of these constant drills at night. I mean, it was like a psychological horror just
Right?
living there.
Why? What's the point? I mean, obviously now we're dealing with a god. right? And Heaven's Gate, there's another religious element there too, an afterlife, a deity, a worship situation. It's not just about a society. It's not just about creating utopia. It's about something more, right? I mean, it's about answering questions. 918 people said they were
Yeah,
willing to kill themselves for what this dude told them was available after life, right? He said, don't worry about it. Drink this Kool-Aid. Everything will be fine. Heaven's Gate, don't worry about it. Chop up. Man, they went to Mexico and had themselves castrated normal, like with a doctor and whatever. I mean, they didn't just take a knife and crazy like do the damage. I mean, they went someplace into a clinic and had it removed professionally. I mean, these people in the cults are committed.
absolutely.
What are you committed to do? Well, I mean, what are you willing to do? I mean, what would it take for you to join a cult like this? Can you find yourself confused enough to be in a situation like, oh shit, I'm in a cult? Can you be
Yeah.
surprised? Wake up one morning, I'm a Nazi. Shit, how'd that happen?
I mean, I'd like to say no, definitely not, but at the same time, you got to think how many of those people would have thought that before joining, you know? Like
There's a
what?
90-year-old man right now on trial in Germany. He was a guard at Auschwitz or something along those lines, one of the concentration camps. I mean, he's about dead, and they're gonna put him in prison the rest of his remaining years or whatever.
Yeah, if you think about it, the Nazis were kind of like a cult, but they
Right?
just
They had their
acquired
religious,
military power.
right? And they had the religious iconography. They had crosses and whatever. They had their high leader telling them to do horrible things for the betterment of their society. I mean, does it get any bigger than the Nazi Germany's
No, I don't think
in
so.
terms of cult?
I mean, they don't call it a cult, but in a way it is. I mean,
What about the fanaticism of neoconservatism, right? Or conservatism in our country right now? Is that a cult? Or do you have to have a religious element to it or a promise of something after death?
yeah, I don't know. I guess that's kind of hard to define. I mean, most of these groups don't like get cult status until something pops up in the media that draws attention to it or something negative.
Right? I mean, I'm
Um,
pretty sure they're not calling themselves a cult. Hey, come join my cult.
yeah, exactly. So it's strange to see like, when did it start becoming called a cult? You know,
I mean, the Branch Davidians, I mean, that we consider that a cult, right? I mean,
yeah,
but they thought they were just a religious movement. I don't know.
yeah. There's so many religious movements that turn into, oh, it's a cult.
What about fiction?
Fiction.
Can you think of cults and fiction? And I mean, I obviously when you think of cults, you have the Thuggy cult from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I guess it's more of a
Yeah.
historical thing, though, right?
Yeah, sort of, I guess. Yeah. Kind of historical fiction.
I am really curious about Lovecraft, obviously, but his cults worshipped these really giant monsters like Cthulhu or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's interesting to kind of put Jim Jones in a situation where what was he trying to accomplish? I mean, nuclear war, communism, utopia. Was he trying to resurrect a god? I mean, I like to put these speculative elements on these moments. Who is Jim Jones? What was he trying to accomplish? He was crazy enough to have 918 people kill themselves and then blow his own brains out. What else did he think? What was he trying for?
Yeah,
Is there any literature?
that's the real mystery of the question
I mean,
is
was there anything surviving as saying what like his ultimate goal was?
not that I've heard or read anywhere. The only thing I've ever seen is just building a utopian society, and that was kind of his catch, like to get people to join and supposedly his goal. And I think part of what they say is, you know, he tried to create this utopia, but he knew it wasn't going to work. They were going to come and shut it down eventually, and his only solution was to just destroy everything, kill everyone.
Because they tried to
All,
shut it down to
yeah,
punish.
for him, it was all or
I
nothing.
can't have him. Nobody can have him.
Yeah,
It's typical kind of argument, isn't it? From kind of a he was married too. Um, I wonder what happened to her. She died there too?
I didn't know he was married. I know
Oh, yeah,
he
she
had
died in
children
1978.
with a lot of the people there,
9
and
kids. It's 9
yeah, and
kids.
he was like given legal rights to the children when they were born. That seems to be another similarity between a lot of cults too, is children being born by the cult leaders and the members, and they have custody of the children. Jonestown itself, like the members, if they brought their children, a lot of them were forced to sign over custody of their children to Jim Jones.
That's crazy. So these 9
Yeah,
kids are his biological kids, or they're the ones that got signed over?
I think those were his biological ones, and then his original ones that were just the custody was signed over.
His wife died in 1978, and I can't figure out if she killed herself or she died of something else. There's like no information.
Yeah, it's
She's
weird
not
how
a
there's
link
no information on certain things. I've never
on
even
this
heard that
situation,
he
right?
had a wife.
It's also very interesting to think that it's in South America in 1977 in Guyana when the British Empire decided that it was no longer a colony. 918 people are down there. I don't know, man. You can never really tell, can you? The conspiracy could be something far reaching. I mean, it could be CIA related. It could be a drug situation. Like they were doing something, importing drugs, and they got wiped out by the local government or our own government. I mean, it's weird how 918 people decided to drink this Kool-Aid and there's no information. And his
Yeah,
wife disappeared the very next year mysteriously. Like, we don't even know how she disappeared.
it's very bizarre. Very bizarre.
Oh, he adopted some Korean. He had a thing about Korean orphans from the Korean War, right? I mean, I guess it's him, but at the same time, we have to. I mean, he's an archetype for a cult leader, right? I mean, if you were
Yeah,
gonna write
definitely.
a cult leader type personality, this is the dude that you'd kind of aim for.
Yeah, I mean, just the loss of life alone, it's the second largest loss of American lives in one day in history.
After 9/11.
Yeah,
To put it in
yep,
perspective, you have 9/11 and then the Jonestown massacre, which didn't even
yeah.
happen on American soil. It happened in South America. I mean, yeah. I mean, what? Let me hear what you would think about, that you would say about Jim Jones.
Oh,
Like what?
geez, I
Like
don't
what?
even know.
Like describe him as a character. How would you use him? Is he on
Oh,
the street? Is he violent? Are you scared of him? Does he? I mean, why is he able to recruit 918 people? Does he go through the women? Does he go through the wife, or does he go through the husband? How does he convince them to uproot their lives and come down to a foreign country and start a community? Is it
that's a
normal?
good question.
Is
Yeah.
it normal then for people to do this? Communes, right? People were starting communes all over the place.
It was
Think,
a common thing back then. I mean, not common, but more common then than any other point in modern history for
right? I mean, if you
all
think
these
about
hippie
communes,
communes
you think of the
and all these
60s and
things
70s,
popping up
right?
all over the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff happened kind of around the same time.
But I don't think about religion being mixed up in that stuff, though. But I also think of them as kind of flower powery places. But some of those communes are really horrible as well. Kind of abusive in this exact same situation where you weren't allowed to own anything. You weren't allowed to say, "That's my woman." We're in a monogamous relationship, or "Those are my clothes." It was basically the community owned everything and could call rights to whatever. Your wife could go be with somebody else, or your husband could go be with somebody else, and nobody's going to say anything. Cause problems, lots of violence, right?
Yeah, it's that's also another common theme is with these cults.
Polygamy, or not polygamy. Is polygamy the right word I'm looking for? Kind of
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
free for all.
polygamy or what's the other word for it? I mean, polygamy has to do with marriage, I think
Yeah, but this is
specifically,
the other
but
one.
yeah.
Polyamorous, maybe. I don't know. Polyamorous.
Yeah, there
I
you
don't know.
go. Yeah, pretty much. That's the right word. Um
Not to
these
say
cult
any of that's
leaders.
wrong or anything, but you don't see a lot of these communes still around, like, the Flower Power 1977 commune, 40 years or 41 years of cooperation. They usually, go away really quickly.
Yeah, a lot of them, even after they break down, still exist in small groups. There's a lot of them. There was the Rajneesh cult. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No.
Rajneesh Param. It was a cult that started in India, and they India basically kicked him out and said, you can't be doing this here. So he came to America and bought, I think it was like I don't know, 800 or a huge amount of acres of land, like thousands of acres, and they just started building a city there. And the only close town was where did this take? I think was it Oregon or something like that. It was yeah, Oregon, and there was a town right by them called Antelope, and it was, I don't know, the population is like a few hundred people, this tiny little town, and these guys are over in the desert on all this land building this city. And so Antelope tried to get them shut down, and what the Rajneesh cult did was they got themselves into like local government office and started voting themselves in, and actually almost took over the entire town of Antelope and started building their city there instead, in addition to the other one.
I mean, there's throughout human history, the collection of effort has been a defining point, right? I mean, the pyramids were built because thousands and thousands of people got together and decided they were going to build them. Um, I mean, if a cult was left alone, it could destroy foundations of governments, right? I mean, it could tear down everything if it's successful. If
Yeah,
you
I'd say this one almost did.
right, I mean, that would be dangerous, especially if you are, the patriarchy or something along those lines, trying to protect what you have.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, I don't know. It's so difficult because what do they say about history? The winners write it. I mean, Jim Jones did not write the history, and he died of a gunshot wound to the head. And I'm looking at Wikipedia, which is obviously infallible. It doesn't really give us any information about what he was really trying to accomplish. It really does besmirch him and
Yeah,
make.
I don't think anybody really knows for sure. I mean, you'd have to really get into his head, and anybody who would have really known is dead.
And at
Uh,
that
you
time,
know,
there was no internet, right? No Reddit showing, play by play of people discovering stuff. And then later on, they
yeah,
cover it up. No, they're covering it up before anybody knows about it. 304 children died.
yeah,
And that's the hardest part because that's, 614 adults going, here, drink this Kool-Aid, kids. Did they know? Or did they do? I mean, I think I saw a documentary saying they did know,
yeah. I
and
think
they
they
were
did.
afraid
They
not
did.
to. I
Yeah,
mean,
they knew. They
they
knew it
knew it
was
was a
poisoned.
possibility, right? They knew that was a plan that could happen.
They rehearsed drinking the Kool-Aid. Before it even happened, they would do rehearsals and get woken up in the middle of the night and actually drink Kool-Aid, and was told it was poisoned, but it wasn't.
That's
Just
so
as
crazy. So they killed
like it was
themselves
almost
over
as
and over again.
yeah, as if he was testing them to see if they would do it.
That's so freaking crazy. I watched, unfortunately, you can see this stuff on the internet now. The Canadian man who was kidnapped in the Philippines. He was decapitated by that terrorist group. I guess I don't know what it was, Al-Qaeda or something like that. But um, they say they practice. Like they'll pull them out of the group and they'll put them in front of the camera and they will do their, Allah Akbar, we're going to murder you now thing. And then they don't murder them. And they do it over and over and over again, 20, 30 times. And then on the 35th time, they, actually do it. So it's kind of a surprise. Oh, I'm actually going to die now. And they do it. They go passively, to the Kool-Aid or to the camera, and let themselves be put in harm's way,
Yeah, it's like a form of brainwashing.
right?
Just repetitiously doing that over and over again. Eventually, you just,
Become
I
safe.
don't know. I
This
guess
most
you get,
dangerous thing.
yeah,
Safe. Ah, it's just Kool-Aid. He makes us drink it every night. It's a ridiculous joke. This time you're dead. This time you're dead. What was it? Cyanide. I mean, that's another interesting thing, right? Do you make your own cyanide?
I believe they bought it.
They
I don't know
bought
how.
cyanide. You can buy
Yeah,
cyanide.
I don't know how they went about getting it back then. I'm not sure about that, but I know they had a whole lot of it.
I mean, you can make it. And you have to have a whole lot if you're killing almost 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, how much cyanide do you need to kill a single I'm gonna look this up. This is not good.
I don't think it's much.
Used to kill people. Cyanide is you'll use to kill ants. So I guess if you had ant poison, you have cyanide.
Huh.
And it has medical uses too. I don't know.
That's the other thing too. When you have a collection of that many people following you, you probably have access to a lot of things that you wouldn't normally have access to, you know?
Like what?
Some like like some of your members might be I don't know, a doctor or a chemist or somebody who would have access to that kind of stuff, you know?
Would they be though? Because that's the problem. Having 918 people drink Kool-Aid from a madman's hand. I mean, are we dealing with the cream of the crop? Or can chemists fall into a trap like this? I mean, let's see.
It's hard to say. I know a lot of the
I want
people
them to
there
be
like this.
uneducated. I want them to have nothing. I want them to have no future. I want them to be desperate for somebody to love them because they are loveless. I mean, they're unlovable. You know what I mean? They're the people that just aren't going to make it
A
without
lot of the
some.
people in Jonestown were like that, but the Raj cult, that cult was filled with lawyers and doctors and I mean actors, like people, up there in the steps, and they just, I mean, they had media representatives and public speakers, and I mean they had everything they needed to just succeed and do whatever they wanted pretty much.
Who was the leader of that cult?
It was what's the guy's name? Trying to remember here. Let me look it up here. He was a like a religious guru in India, and trying to look up his name. I know he was known as a few different names. Let's see here. I'm trying to find his name. Let's see.
Huh. I thought this happened in 1977, the Jonestown thing. 1977, but his wife died in 1978. She gave them a tour and then she killed herself, or she died of poison.
Hmm.
It's such a
That
crazy
just sounds
story.
strange. Like how maybe she wasn't there during the poisoning. I don't know.
On the
It's
final morning of Ryan's visit, Jones's wife took reporters on a tour of Jonestown. Later in the day, she was found dead at the pavilion, having been poisoned. But
okay.
she
So
died in
yeah, she was there
1970.
during the poisoning.
He died in 1977, so that doesn't add up, though.
No, yeah, you're right. That doesn't. Unless she took him on a tour of afterwards, but then why? Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. There's missing information here. Who'd she give a
Yeah.
tour to? Hold on a second. Let me go back down. This is a long page. Did you read any books on this subject?
No books, just a lot of articles and documentaries and things like that.
Did you see any compelling photographs of the deaths?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah,
They took photos from the air, and I mean, it's just you can't even see the ground. It's just people laying on the
those
ground.
people.
Just that's it. Like just piles and piles of people everywhere. Really horrific stuff.
So this is suggesting that she showed Ryan
Yeah, he was the
around, but
congressman. Okay, yeah.
in 1970. When did this happen? I thought it was 77. Am I
Let me
crazy?
see.
Oh, no, I'm
Hmm,
wrong. It
see if
is
I can
78. That's why I'm confused. Because 1977 was when it happened, but it was 1978. I just can't read. But I mean, did you figure out what the cult leader of the successful cult did? What
Yeah,
his name? Who he was?
I mean, I guess he just called himself Rajneesh. It's like,
Rajneesh.
yeah, Rajneesh. And
Sounds so familiar to me.
although
Raj.
he was, the interesting thing is he was the leader, but really the person who like really ran everything like for him
Yeah.
was another woman. It was a woman who was in the group.
Osho is a guy's name. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one of his names too. He was known as Osho. Yeah.
Rashnish, also known as Akanara, Rashnis, Bhagwan, Shahri. I have no clue.
He has a
Gonna
whole
give
bunch
up.
of names. Yeah.
I give up completely. He is dead. He died in 1990, 69 years old, or 68 years old, actually. So that's very young. How did he die? What'd you say? What do you think he died of?
I know he eventually got arrested at the end of the whole thing. I don't know if he died in jail or if he ever got out.
He died of a heart attack. He died because living in the body had become a hell after alleged poisoning in U.S. jails.
Hmm.
So he was arrested. What was he arrested for?
They basically just slapped him with whatever charges they could. The government had a really hard time like fighting them because, like I said, like they had a lot of lawyers in their cult, and they had lots of money, lots of people. Like I said, they almost took over a whole town. They had their own police force, like an actual legal police force with their own police cars. I mean, they had everything. I think this is one of the cults that had like the most resources, even more than Jim Jones.
Yeah, this guy, he seems like he was just attacked, like endlessly attacked. There was wiretapping and bugging and bioterrorist attacks, and somebody tried to murder his personal physician.
Yeah, yeah, somebody tried to poison his doctor because there was a little bit of conflict within the group. This woman, Sheila, was actually put in charge of like running everything in the city,
Uh-huh.
and I think she had some disagreements with how he was running certain things, and some disagreements with his doctor. So I think they conspired to kill the doctor in order to, I can't remember what the reason was. It was they wanted to kill him for, oh man, I can't remember what it was. They had some reason for wanting to kill his doctor.
So I'm trying to figure out. I mean, it's very interesting. The society does not like people who want to start their own society, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's very much, that's the other thing too. Like this Rajneesh cult, they never actually murdered anyone, or they didn't have like a suicide thing. There wasn't anything like inherently evil about their cult, but
I guess
just the way.
they were considered religiousless. They didn't have a religion associated with the
Yeah,
cult either. It was just kind of, I guess, ideological, not religious in basis.
yeah, it was more ideological. And the interesting thing was most of these cults tell you to, do away with physical possessions and all that. This cult was the opposite. This guy had like 12 Rolls Royces,
That's horrible.
yeah, like
That
I
just
mean,
indicates there's more going on there, right? He's 69 years old, 68 years old, and he dies of a heart attack. That's not generally a good thing either, right? It speaks of kind of vices, potentially,
yeah,
I
they
guess.
definitely had vices. I mean, the cult was very, you know, they were not anti-materialistic, that's for
It's
sure.
interesting. Well, I'm looking at a picture of them greeting Rashnish. and they're standing on the side of this dirt road and they're all wearing orange.
That
Like
was
you're
the
look,
other thing. Yeah, everyone wore orange or red clothing in the
that's
whole
interesting.
cult, all of them.
And I thought it was all like uniform, like they were wearing robes or something, but they're not. They're all wearing unique clothing to themselves.
Well,
You know,
that's
1984's fashion,
interesting.
just orange or whatever.
Um, there was a reason for that actually. In India, they were wearing like robes, like monk style clothing. And when they came to America, they decided to wear like normal clothes to try to fit in better, but they still kept with the color scheme.
Oh, it's interesting. Orange
Yeah,
robes.
they thought they would be, more accepted if they wore like jeans and t-shirts and things like that
Oh,
instead
so
of showing
orange
up in a bunch
robes.
of robes.
That's like a Thai Buddhist thing.
Yeah, yeah, it was very Buddhist, like kind of like oriented in the beginning, I think. A mixture of that kind of idealism, just without the expulsion of materialism.
But did they believe in ownership, or did they share?
I think it was both. They didn't have like an anti-ownership thing, but everyone kind of got together and pulled together and
Uh,
just built this whole city and supported each other. And it's an interesting cult because it's one of those things where like you think it's going to be the next Jonestown, but you know no one gets killed.
yeah, they broke it up. I wonder what would happen if they'd let it continue on. Oh, he died at 58, not 68. So it's even worse. Um, he was the sex guru. Mike,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
was it called? God, what was Mike Myers did a movie a couple decades ago? The sex something. Is it the sex guru? I don't remember. The love somebody? I don't know. It failed miserably. It was like one of the last few movies he did before he disappeared.
yeah, I think I remember that, like vaguely.
I think it's based on this guy.
Yeah, it
I
might
mean, this
be.
this is fascinating because I mean, it is the exact opposite of a Charlie Manson or a Jim Jones. I mean, Jim Jones was all about control and humiliation and whatnot, and it seemed like this guy did want to kind of, um, push kind of a. He was a vocal critic of socialism, communism, and anarchism. He wanted capitalism. So crazy. He just this is so odd. I mean, I really want to look into this a little bit more. He's like completely
Yeah,
opposite of what
it's
you
a
would think he would be.
strange cult. Yeah, yeah, it's very. They had like crazy sex parties, and I mean,
I mean,
uh,
that is the no.
they
That's the thing, isn't it? Sex in all of these cults is the huge is what they're doing. I mean, Charlie Manson's about sex. These guys are about
mm-hmm.
sex. Jim Jones obviously was about sex. He humiliated that dude in front of his congregation to show that he had homosexual tendencies, their parishioner, because he was going to be aroused by Jim Jones doing whatever he did to him. I'm not sure. Wikipedia didn't go into detail. Do you know what I'm talking about? Um,
Vaguely, yeah.
Heaven's Gate removed their sexuality, though. I'm sure there's other cults out there too that uh, deify, not deify, villainize sex in a way.
Definitely, yeah. A lot of them do. Most of them do.
So,
To achieve that like purism that
mhm.
most of these cults claim to, try to help you achieve.
At the end of the day, you have to have a leader, and the leader is going to control you. The leader is going to want something that you have. Um, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, it seemed like he wanted all those the young girls, right? He wanted all the women to himself. It seemed to be what he was looking to do.
Yeah, a
But
lot of these are sex motivated, like the Buddha field. I think the guy who ran that cult, who has never been caught, um, has charges and accusation, hundreds of charges and accusations for sexual assault on the cult members. Like,
well, I thought that was Rashish. I thought that was this guy that we were just talking about. Wasn't he the
no,
Buddha
this
Fields?
one, no, the Buddha field was a different one actually. That one was like a smaller cult. They didn't like build a commune or a city or anything like that. They just kind of moved around the country and people followed the guy around, and people left the cult, people joined the cult. Like if you tried to leave, they didn't come after you or anything like that. It was a strange cult because it was small, it was kind of quiet and low key, and it never got really shut down. The guy's still out there somewhere, and he probably still has followers. Like
Why not,
it's
right? If
scary
he's
to
still
think.
alive,
Yeah.
I don't think they end up giving up their ways. I mean, Charlie Manson had followers until the day he died, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
I
mean, he
mean,
still does. Problem. He still
yeah,
does have followers, definitely.
I can't believe the dude was so rich that his sons are fighting over his inheritance or his money that he left behind. He's a millionaire. That's crazy. What about history? If you go back beyond the 20th century, can you pull different things out? Have you looked, I mean, know of
You know,
anything that
I had thought about that earlier actually, and I was thinking like all these cults are modern era from the last maybe 40, 50, 60 years at most. And before that, you really don't hear of a lot of cults in history. I mean actually if you think about it, um from the Romans' eyes, Christianity and Jesus Christ itself would have been considered kind of a cult
they were, right?
in
The
its
Christ
beginning.
cults, when they popped up, I mean,
Yeah.
they used to, I don't know what they used to, but yeah, I mean, they used to follow these guys around. They used to consider them the not the Antichrist, but the coming. I guess they really wanted it to happen badly. I'm probably confusing history with the life of Bryan. I'm trying to think. There was a cult. There's been many cults in America. I mean, I don't know your religion. Hopefully, I'm not about to insult you, but you look at the Mormons, right? Back in the
They're
day, Joseph
definitely
Smith.
considered a cult. Yeah. I mean,
I
they're
mean,
a
some people
religion,
now, right?
but they're also a cult. It's funny how some cults have become a religion, like Scientology
Hmm.
and like Mormonism. I mean, they have religious status in America. They have tax
And they're not
exemption
unique either. I
and
mean,
everything.
there have been other people, other things that have done that as well. And Mormon people have special underwear. Is that a sex thing? They have polygamy too.
Really, yeah, they're big on polygamy. I've not
And
heard about
then
the underwear thing.
they have magic underwear. I know nothing about their magic underwear other than I've heard it being mentioned. My wife worked with a Mormon dude from all right, do not type in magic underwear into Google and expect to find
That's
anything
probably a
other
bad
than
idea.
not a good decision. Not a good decision. Um, very distracting. Thank you, Google. Magic Mormon underwear. Yeah, the temple garment they call it. Also referred to as holy priesthood Mormon underwear. I
Oof.
don't know. That doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's a t-shirt and underwear.
There's actually
I
a,
don't
a
know.
Mormon compound near where I live. It's not that far away from here. And they have their own like agriculture, their own farm. They grow their own food. They even have their own like packaged foods. Like
That's
my
interesting.
friend had a box of macaroni and cheese. I don't know where the hell he got it. I don't remember, but it was actually from the Mormon like compound, and it has like their logos and everything on the back of the box. It was pretty creepy. I was like, I'm not eating that macaroni and cheese. You know that,
Oh, that's
right?
very
Like,
interesting. I have a podcaster I listen to a lot named Scott Johnson who records out of Salt Lake City, and he is a Mormon. He doesn't talk about it very often, but it sneaks into his conversation, and they're very ardent. And I guess in Salt Lake City there is a compound, and whenever there's a world disaster like earthquakes or tsunamis or whatever, this this production facility will turn on and just start producing food, like all types of things that people need across the world when they like when there's natural disasters. So that's probably where that
hmm,
macaroni and cheese came from, is that factory, and they make all that stuff,
yeah,
box it up, ship it
probably.
out. I mean, it's crazy to think about it, right? Because like 150 years ago, it was 100 people in the middle of the desert fighting tooth and nail to create some kind of society or culture for themselves. They weren't happy with what they had. They had to make something of their own. And if it was today, there wouldn't be Mormons, would they? Because there's no Branch Davidians and there are no Jim Jones people. I mean, we don't like it. We shoot them down.
Yeah. And yeah,
Scientology
well,
is weird. It snuck through. But if you look at the media, the news media, they're being attacked left and right. I mean, they're not
oh
being
yeah,
let alone.
they're looked at very suspiciously.
Maybe it's
And
obviously. I mean, I think they should be looked at suspiciously. The information coming through seems really awful. But society
yeah, they're
does not seem
very
to like cults.
strange too. They're very mysterious.
They
Scientology, I
grab you, they take you into their grip, their clutches, and then they won't let you leave, and they won't let you talk about what you're doing, and they have their little secret proprietary information stuff going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
very secretive.
very secretive. You can't talk about it for fear of being ostracized. And I think the ostracism is painful, like potentially deadly. I think they even kidnap people and put them into like Scientology prisons or something. And
Yeah,
even
who knows?
the guy, the cult leader, Miskivitz or whatever his name is, his own wife has disappeared. Like, nobody knows where she is.
Wow.
People keep coming forward and saying, "Oh no, I've seen her. She's fine." But the wife herself has not stepped forward in forever. His own father had to run away. He had to escape, and he's like underground basically to avoid being killed. I mean, that's the modern cult. That's a success story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, those are the
What
ones
else do you got?
that made it, I guess.
That's what Jim Jones was aiming for, wasn't it? A complete control of everything and everyone. His rules.
Yeah,
This is what
definitely.
this is what sexuality is. No other definition. Now drink the Kool-Aid. I, I love that he created that though, drinking the Kool-Aid. Getting on board with an idea.
Yeah, I mean that's uh yeah, that term comes right from that, don't drink the Kool-Aid, you know. Jim Jones.
And this is human though, isn't it? Though, getting into a group mentality, giving into an idea and fighting tooth and nail for it. I mean, 18-year-old kids joining the military and picking up a weapon and killing another 18-year-old kid across a battlefield or whatever for no other reason than they're indoctrinated on the military life or whatever, right?
Yeah, there is a group mentality or a need to belong to something within, in human nature for I think for a lot of people, especially people who are unhappy with their lives. A lot of people are looking for something like that to be part of something. And I think that's probably part of the allure with these cults that gets people in, to see, oh, this is going to be great. And,
Yeah.
it could
They'll
change
do
my
anything.
life. And
They'll do anything to make the person happy who's telling them that they're doing good things, right? Jim
yeah,
Jones said, "This is the idyllic cult society. We're gonna make everything perfect. It's gonna be the best." Raj Jish or whatever his name was, same thing, right? We're gonna make the best society. This is the way things are supposed to work, and you can't just be 10% in. You can't just dip a toe in their philosophy. You have to be committed completely, or you
yeah,
ruin it. I don't know. It's something about humanity though. I mean, those 18-year-old kids in the military willing to pull that trigger and kill another person just the year before were eating at a cafeteria, talking about prom or whatever. Murder was never even close to their minds. So I mean, that thing is inside of us. We're capable of it up to a
definitely.
certain point.
Yeah, I mean, history proves that for sure. Uh,
We're really able to do some pretty horrible things to ourselves. Um, I mean, you write horror fiction primarily, right? Or do you consider yourself?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
mostly
mean,
horror.
cults are great because as a person, you never think you're going to end up in a cult. I mean, Smallville, that actress who played the reporter, right? What was her name? You know who I'm talking
Oh,
about?
yeah, the Smallville, this TV series, right?
Uh-huh. And just recently she's
Yeah.
going to prison because she's like a cult leader.
Really?
Mistress or something. Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Really?
No, I
Oh
didn't
man,
hear that.
I wish Smallville.
Yeah, I used to watch that show.
I watched it a little bit. Her name is Allison Mack. She
Huh.
is, God, I want to say something with Day, DEA. You know, Google, you're ridiculous with this autocorrect thing. Allison Mack. Oh, it's NXIVM. Must be Roman numerals or something. But yeah, she the cult leader was they were branding people. Like they would bring them in and brand them. And it was
Wow.
like they were sexually grooming them to be sex slaves and things like that. I don't know. It's like it's very fascinating because there
Yeah.
has to be like an element of procreation in there, or ruining it, or controlling it, or capturing it. Jim
Yeah,
Jones
Charles
had
Manson
9
had the
kids.
same thing going on. I mean, he started out his whole thing started with like 18 women living in an apartment with him.
Right, in San
And
Francisco.
yeah, and eventually like he got other people into the cult by offering services by the women to those people.
Women.
Like that's how he got like the ranch. Like the man who owned the ranch was like an 80-year-old blind man, and he would offer like he could have sex with one of the women a couple of times a month in exchange for living on the ranch. Like
I
that's how he
know.
paid the rent. Like I mean, it's just bizarre. It's insane.
That's how he ingratiated himself with the Beetle too. He picked up
Yeah,
just sex. He was a pimp. He was the pimp cult leader basically.
pretty much.
I don't know. I love the idea of it. I think it's incredible because you wake up Allison Mack in jail one day and you're in the news as the cult leader's whatever. I mean, I guess you don't know
That's
how bad it is until it's bad, until you're drinking the Kool-Aid.
yeah, exactly. Like I wonder what people think in these cults. Like when do you realize you're in a cult, or does
Oh
that
shit.
realization never come?
Right?
You
Because
know, you're
they
just
thought that
involved in this, and it gets worse and worse, and you start thinking, "Am I in a
I
cult?"
didn't know that Jim
Like,
Jones made them practice every night. I didn't
yeah,
know that Jim Jones said, "Okay, guys, we're gonna play Suicide again for the 20th time. Of
yeah, he
course,
did
you're
it a
gonna drink the
bunch of
Kool-Aid.
times.
100% you're gonna drink the Kool-Aid because you've done it many, 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 many times."
Yeah, he psychologically beat people down with that. I mean, getting waken up in the middle of the night with like air raid sirens going off and bright lights everywhere, and spotlights, and you waking up in the middle of the night. You're sleep deprived, you're food deprived. I mean, at that point, your brain just probably becomes malleable
Right? All you gotta do is
at
drink this
some
Kool-Aid.
point.
That's
Yeah,
all you gotta do, and we'll let you go back to sleep. We'll let just go back to sleep as soon as you drink this Kool-Aid. You'll be fine. 918 people dead later. I mean, it's not doing anything to humans that humans aren't already doing to themselves, right? I mean, we can make cults be this thing called the United States of America too. I mean, there's iconography all over our money and symbolism everywhere, and we're supposed to do things and we're being controlled, and I don't know, the cults, right? That's a pretty cool subject.
yeah. It's like, well, what differentiates it? A cult is really just a small form of a large entity.
Right, it's the ones who win at the end of the day.
Yeah,
If the British had snuffed out the revolutionary fervor of George Washington and his cronies, that would be probably considered like the independent cult or something. I mean,
yeah,
they were what were they? Deists, right? They were they believed a weird thing at the time. They weren't Anglicans, they weren't Catholics, they were deists. They believed that maybe there was a God, but God wasn't what they were being told. I mean, they had a completely backwards idea of everything. They were cultists. It's like they won though, so they get to call themselves revolutionists and change the world. So, if Jim Jones hadn't been crazy, honestly, I mean, what caused him to be crazy? He had 918 people. Why couldn't he have done it the right way?
that's a good question. I mean, you would think someone with that much power would do something good with it rather
right?
than just, you know, mass suicide.
It's like somebody who wrote a best-selling novel or something. Honestly, I mean, he did the impossible. He got people together to do something. A lot of people.
Yeah, something amazing. I mean, building a whole town in South American jungle. I mean, that's a lot of power just to
A lot of power.
get people to do that.
It's just wasted on an insane person.
Yeah.
Is that all it is? It's just a crazy person and it's just wasted the opportunity? Or is it 918 crazy? Oh no, I'm sorry. Let's not wrap up the children in that. They're the innocent ones. But is it the 600 crazy people?
I don't think so. I mean, everything I've looked at and read and seen about it, the people, I mean, they were just brainwashed. They
If I
thought they were
wrote a
going to
story,
someplace great.
yeah. So if I wrote a story, you're in Jamestown, and it's about a family, right, in Jamestown. You'd want to see that family as normal as possible, so that you're completely baffled as to why they're there, right? You want to know, like, Jesus, man, you seem like a normal dude and a great mom, and you got these kids. Why are you in Jamestown?
That's how it was for a lot of people. One of the people who survived, he was a member of the cult, and he had his kid there with him. And when the senator left, he wanted to leave with him, and Jim Jones wouldn't let him take his kid with him. The guy left and survived the shooting at the airport, but his kid was killed back in Jonestown.
It's freaking a nightmare.
Yeah.
How do you live? I mean, obviously, me and my wife talk about that. How do you live with yourself after something like that, knowing that you put your kid in that situation?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine living with that.
I
I
mean,
saw a
how do you do that?
documentary and the guy was in there, and it's just,
What'd you think of
uh,
him?
I mean, it was
What were
hard
your
to
thoughts?
say. You could tell he was just messed up from it, but he said more or less, he didn't know what he was doing at the time. Uh, Basically, he was just,
How old was he?
I think,
4?
late 20. Oh, the kid. Oh,
No, no, the adult.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't understand, man. I mean,
What is
how
it?
old?
20s, 30s. I think he was in.
I mean, and unfortunately, they say that your brain doesn't really stop developing until you're 25 years old, but you still know, right? You know what you're
Yeah,
doing. I mean, you gotta know. They say that babies, you could put a child on a table and they will only go to the edge because they understand that the edge is the end of the table and the floor is far below them and they'll get hurt. I mean, the limit, right? He had to have known what was his intention. At least having escaped, we know they wanted to get to a spaceship, but that even wasn't the original intention. I guess that's the thing, though, man. How the hell does that family get to Jamestown, right? I mean, do you want to know how they get there? What's the ultimate intention?
yeah. I
Like
mean, for a
Donald
lot
Trump
of
is president
people,
because everybody thinks that they're temporarily embarrassed millionaires, right? So they vote for this dude and they make bad Twitter posts for him or whatever. But my point is that these people that go down there are temporarily embarrassed something, right? They're there for not altruism, but for selfishness. Something they're doing is going to benefit them. But what?
yeah,
They're going to have a utopian society? Or are they secretly the one that are they Jim Jones's lost son or something? Is that what it is? Is it a family dynamic that's missing? What makes humans so corruptible like that?
yeah. That's the question. I mean, I think that's what you know the big question people are trying to answer regarding cults and these kind of situations is how does that even happen?
Are there modern day cults that you can think of? Does Al
Um,
Qaeda count as like certain sects of Islam count? Can you think of anything that's popped up? I know there was one in Arizona recently with young children involved, but it was a very strange one. It was very like 7 or 8 people involved.
hmm. I know there are small like modern cults that are like still in operation. And most of them are based off of some form of Christianity or combined Christianity with other religions. And they're relatively small, maybe a few hundred members or 1,000 members. And, they just continue to operate, in small numbers.
Heaven's Gate's still out there operating.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's his wife or his sister that runs it. It's like a website. They're still up and running. Still the same group. They don't mention their deceased brethren, but they still are functioning as human beings. So what do you think? Did we forget to mention anything about cults that you think we should mention?
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to say. There's just so many questions. There's more questions than answers.
Why? Right?
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. Why
How?
and how?
And then it's like there has to be a reward. They're not doing it for altruism. They're being manipulated for something.
Yeah, most of the, and I think it has a lot. It's financially motivated for the leaders too, I think, in a lot of these, because most of them require you to sign
Give
over everything you own.
when they live in squalor, right? I mean,
Yeah, and
they
they
don't
live in
live well.
squalor.
I mean, Charlie Manson lived just as shitty as all his followers did, and had
Oh
just as
yeah,
much
they
gonorrhea and syphilis as his followers did too. I
yeah, I
mean,
think yeah, what was it? The one guy who joined, who was, in movie producing or whatever, I can't remember his name, but he paid for all their gonorrhea treatments, and all
oh
those
yeah,
people living in
the
that
the
house, it was like
beetle,
$100,000 worth, like, medical treatments for those people he
and they
spent.
kept getting it, and they kept getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to kind of understand. I mean, it's easier to understand if you look at it from perspective of Charlie Manson, because a lot of those kids had nowhere to go anyway, right? They were
Yeah.
already sucked into this flower power movement thing where they were going to change the world through peace and sex and love and acid and weed and whatever. So they were sleeping in parks and kind of not anywhere to go. And this guy shows up. He's already got 18 women around him. That's such a crazy world. Can you imagine that? 1970s? Like you just drive down the road in California and they're just women hitchhiking.
Yeah, it's so strange, and like, and you would think, what would be the allure of, I guess that would give him some kind of allure, or you would see him differently, like, wow, he's got all these people with him, all these women with him, like he must be some kind of amazing person, or I don't know, something. And but at the same time, you would think, wouldn't you look at that and be like, it's kind of weird, let me stay away from that. But people joined. He had probably, what was a few hundred followers, I think, at
Yeah,
least.
he was pushing people away. And still, I mean, think about this. He had somebody willing to walk up to a United States president and try to shoot them and from prison. I mean, he talked them into doing that from prison.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? I mean, he could. The book was amazing. Honestly, it was really interesting to see how people reacted to him, even though they knew he was locked up.
Yeah, people still followed him even after everything happened and he went to prison. He still had followers. What was it? A few years ago, there was a woman that was going to marry him and then, like, changed her mind at the last minute.
Oh, really? I thought he was married.
No, yeah. I can't remember her name, but she was going to marry Charles Manson in prison. And I don't know what her motivation was. Probably notoriety or fate, who knows?
I want to write a
But
story about
that's
Charlie Manson where Charlie Manson was actually the coming of Christ or the Antichrist. It's either the story is going to take one way or the other. It's either going to be the Antichrist and the world was saved by the United States throwing him into prison, or he was actually the Christ and
that's
and
an
the
interesting
and then
concept.
and the narrative kind of got skewed. Well, obviously the narrative got skewed because they wanted to throw him in prison to keep him from corrupting the American ideals or whatever was going to happen. I don't know. I like the idea of cults. I'm probably gonna write a story about it. What anything else you want to add to this subject?
That's what I can think of.
I mean, I'd love to get into the Lovecraftian elements of it, but he was more of, his cults are doing the same thing, right? His cult leaders are pushing his cultists to worship space gods, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, these guys that we're talking about now, Jim Jones and Charlie Manson, are doing the same thing in a way.
Yeah, it's very similar actually. You know, worshiping some kind of, especially the ones that, you know, worship aliens or think the aliens are going to come and take them away. Because I mean, Lovecraft's creatures are basically aliens, so it's very similar to these modern cults, and that these cults are worshiping these alien beings.